Amara Thompson pushed her cleaning cart down the gleaming marble hallway of Sterling Industries' executive floor, the wheels squeaking softly in the evening silence that had become her companion for the past 3 years. And though most people saw her as just another invisible janitor in a gray uniform, her sharp eyes missed nothing in these quiet hours when the powerful had gone home to their mansions. At 48 years old, she had learned that being invisible had its advantages because people talked freely around her, dropped their guards, left their secrets scattered like the paper trash she collected each night. And lately, something about Marcus Sterling, the billionaire founder whose face graced magazine covers and business channels, had been troubling her deeply. The first sign had been small enough that anyone else would have missed it, but Amara had noticed the untouched meals accumulating in his office trash. Expensive sushi and gourmet sandwiches, worth more than she made in a day, thrown away with barely a bite taken, and she knew from experience that when powerful men stopped eating, something was terribly wrong. Her nephew Michael had looked the same way 5 years ago, when he was trapped in addiction, that hollow-eyed exhaustion that food couldn't fix. And though she'd tried to push the comparison away, more signs kept appearing like breadcrumbs leading to a dark truth. The burn marks on Marcus Sterling's wrist, which she glimpsed one evening when he rolled up his sleeve thinking he was alone, were perfectly round and evenly spaced, hidden under his collection of luxury watches during the day, and they reminded her of something she couldn't quite place until she remembered her grandmother's stories about old-fashioned punishment methods. Then there were the prescription bottles in his private bathroom, which she was supposed to empty without looking, but couldn't help noticing had different names on them. Names that weren't Marcus Sterling, and the pills inside were different. Colors and shapes each week, as if someone was experimenting with combinations. She started keeping a small notebook in her cleaning supplies, jotting down dates and observations, because her mother had always taught her that if something feels wrong, you should document it, and every entry made her more concerned about the man who ran this empire. The way he walked had changed too, from confident strides that echoed authority to uncertain steps, where he touched walls for balance when he thought no one was watching, and his signature on documents left out on his desk had transformed from bold strokes to shaky scratches that barely resembled his name. Tonight felt different though, heavier somehow. As she entered the executive suite and found Marcus still at his desk at 11:30, his head in his hands, his usually perfect silver hair disheveled, and she could hear him mumbling to himself, in a voice that sounded lost and confused. She quietly began emptying wastebaskets, trying not to disturb him. But then his phone rang and his whole demeanor changed to something desperate and frightened as he answered. Yes, I understand. I'll sign whatever you need. Just please. I can't think straight anymore. The headaches are getting worse. The voice on the other end was cold and demanding, though Amara couldn't make out the exact words. But she heard Marcus agree to things that made no sense. Transferring accounts, signing over properties, authorizing changes that even she, with her limited business knowledge, recognized as dangerous for any CEO to approve without lawyers present. When the call ended, Marcus stumbled to his private bathroom, and through the cracked door, Amara watched him take handful after handful of pills from those mysterious bottles, washing them down with what looked like whiskey, his hands shaking so badly that pills scattered across the marble floor like fallen pearls. She wanted to help, to say something, but what could a cleaning lady say to a billionaire that he would believe, and who would listen to her concerns when she was nobody? In this tower of power and wealth where she was paid to be invisible and silent. As she moved closer to clean near his desk, she noticed documents spread across the surface. Medical forms with words like cognitive decline and power of attorney and mental incompetence highlighted in yellow, and her heart raced because she recognized this pattern from when vultures had circled her own father during his illness, trying to take advantage of his confusion. The CFO's name, Richard Blackwood, appeared on every document as the designated decision-maker, and Amara remembered how often she'd seen him visiting Marcus lately, always bringing coffee or tea, always insisting Marcus drink it in front of him, always watching with an intensity that now seemed predatory rather than caring. Her hands trembled as she photographed the documents with her old phone, knowing she was crossing a line but unable to ignore what every instinct screamed was a slow-motion murder, disguised as natural decline. And as she worked, she heard Marcus on the phone again, his voice now slurred and thick, agreeing to meet with more lawyers tomorrow, agreeing to sign more papers, agreeing to everything while understanding nothing. She finished her cleaning routine mechanically, her mind racing with what to do next, who to tell, how to help this man who didn't even know her name but whose life was clearly in danger. And as she pushed her cart toward the elevator, she made a decision that would either save Marcus Sterling or cost her everything she had worked for. Because sometimes being invisible meant you were the only one who could see the truth clearly enough to act on it. The clock had just struck 2 in the morning when Amara found Marcus Sterling collapsed behind his massive oak desk. His body twisted at an unnatural angle on the Persian rug that cost more than her yearly salary, and her heart stopped for a moment before training from her years as a nursing assistant in Jamaica kicked in, sending her rushing to his side while pulling out her phone to call for help. His skin felt clammy and cold under her touch as she checked his pulse, which was weak but steady, and his eyes were rolling back as he mumbled incoherently, "They're poisoning me, every day, in the coffee. In the water, they want me dead, but make it look natural." Words that would have sounded like paranoid ravings if Amara hadn't already suspected something sinister was happening in this glass tower. Instead of immediately calling 911, something made her hesitate as she looked around the office, spotting his personal water bottle on the desk, the one with his initials that he always drank from during meetings, and a container of soup from the executive dining room that was still warm, and making a split-second decision that could cost her job or worse. She grabbed both items and shoved them into her cleaning cart under the supplies. Marcus's hand suddenly gripped her wrist with surprising strength, his eyes focusing for just a moment as he whispered, "Help me. Someone help me," before losing consciousness completely. And this time, Amara did call security, shouting into the phone that Mr. Sterling needed immediate medical attention, that he had collapsed and was unresponsive. Within minutes, the quiet executive floor erupted into chaos as security guards, paramedics, and suddenly Richard Blackwood himself appeared, still perfectly dressed despite the late hour, which struck Amara as odd, since he lived 40 minutes away and couldn't have arrived so quickly unless he had been expecting this call. "What happened here?" Blackwood demanded, his cold blue eyes fixing on Amara with an intensity that made her skin crawl. And she kept her voice steady as she explained she had found Mr. Sterling collapsed while doing her regular cleaning. Carefully, not mentioning what she had heard him say or what she had taken, the paramedics worked quickly, checking Marcus's vitals and preparing him for transport. And Amara noticed how Blackwood whispered something to one of them, slipping what looked like money into his pocket, before turning back to her with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You can go home now. We'll handle everything from here, and thank you for your quick action." But Amara didn't go home. Instead, she waited until the ambulance left and Blackwood had returned to his own office before she made her way to her cousin Deshawn's apartment in Brooklyn, carrying the water bottle and soup container in a plastic bag like they were evidence in a crime, which she was beginning to believe they were. Deshawn worked as a lab technician at a private medical facility and had access to testing equipment. And though he protested that this could get him fired, the desperation in Amara's voice convinced him to run some basic tests on the samples she brought. 3 days later, while she was preparing for her evening shift, Deshawn called with results that made her blood run cold. "Amara, this is serious. There are heavy sedatives in both samples, benzodiazepines, mixed with something else I can't identify, without more sophisticated equipment. But this combination would definitely cause confusion, memory loss, and physical weakness if taken regularly." Armed with this information, but unsure how to proceed, Amara decided to approach Marcus's assistant, Jennifer, a young woman who always treated the cleaning staff with respect and seemed genuinely concerned about her boss's declining health. She caught Jennifer alone in the break room the next evening, carefully explaining what she had discovered, showing her the test results Deshawn had printed. But instead of the ally she hoped to find, Jennifer's face transformed from surprise to anger to something like fear. "You're insane," Jennifer said, her voice rising. "Do you have any idea what you're suggesting? That someone is trying to kill Mr. Sterling? That's conspiracy theory nonsense. And if you spread these lies, I'll make sure you're not just fired, but that you never work in this city again." The threat in Jennifer's voice was real. But what scared Amara more was the way the younger woman's hands shook as she spoke, the way she kept glancing at the door, as if afraid someone might overhear, and the way she quickly pocketed the test results instead of throwing them away as worthless. That night, Amara watched from the shadows as Jennifer went straight to Blackwood's office. And though she couldn't hear the conversation through the thick glass, she could see the animated gestures, Jennifer's apparent distress, and Blackwood's calm, calculated responses that ended with him putting his hand on Jennifer's shoulder in what looked like comfort but might have been threat. The next few days became a tense waiting game as Amara continued her nightly rounds, noticing that security seemed to be watching her more closely. that her keycard access to certain areas had been restricted, and that Blackwood himself had started working late, often appearing wherever she was cleaning with suspicious timing. Marcus had returned to work after his collapse, looking worse than ever, his movements robotic, as if he was operating on autopilot, signing whatever was put in front of him without reading, and Amara noticed that his coffee was now always prepared by Blackwood personally, who would stand there watching until every drop was consumed. She started taking pictures of everything she could, documents left on desks, the pills in Marcus's bathroom, which changed colors again, the way Blackwood and Jennifer met secretly in empty conference rooms, building a collection of evidence on her phone that she backed up to her nephew's cloud storage every night in case something happened to her. The breaking point came when she overheard Blackwood on a phone call, speaking in hushed tones about accelerating the timeline and how the old man won't last another month at this rate. And she knew she had to act, even if it meant sacrificing everything she had worked for in this country. She tried one more time to warn someone, leaving an anonymous note in Marcus's car, another in his gym locker, even sending an email from a fake account to his lawyer. But each attempt seemed to be intercepted. The notes disappeared. The email bounced back, and she realized with growing horror that Blackwood's network of control was more extensive than she had imagined. On her last night, before what she had decided would be her final attempt to save Marcus Sterling, she was cornered by two security guards who accused her of theft, claiming they had video evidence of her taking items from the executive offices. And as they escorted her toward the security office, she knew this was Blackwood's way of silencing her permanently. But she also knew she had one last card to play that might save both her and Marcus if she could just survive the next few hours. Amara's hands moved swiftly through the darkness of Richard Blackwood's office, her master key trembling slightly as she knew she had exactly 17 minutes before the security guards finished their rotation on the lower floors. 17 minutes to find the evidence that would prove she wasn't crazy, and that Marcus Sterling's life hung by a thread growing thinner each day. The executive floor was eerily quiet at 3 in the morning, just the hum of computers and the distant sound of the city below. And she used her phone's flashlight sparingly, afraid that too much light might alert someone to her presence in a place where she had no legitimate reason to be at this hour. Her heart pounded as she opened drawer after drawer in Blackwood's desk, finding normal business documents until she reached the locked bottom drawer that she managed to pry open with a letter opener, revealing folders marked Project Sterling Sunset that made her stomach turn with the implications of that name. Inside were medical reports from a Dr. Harrison Pike, documenting Marcus's supposed rapid cognitive decline with dates that didn't match reality, describing symptoms on days when Amara knew Marcus had been sharp and coherent, creating a false medical history that would stand up in court if no one questioned it. There were financial documents too, showing systematic transfers of Sterling Industries assets to shell companies, all controlled by Blackwood. Transfers that Marcus had, apparently, authorized but with signatures that looked forced and shaky. Nothing like his usual bold strokes, even when he was struggling. The most damning evidence was a contract with a private psychiatric facility in Vermont, already signed by Blackwood as Marcus's medical proxy, with an admission date just 2 weeks away, and Amara realized with horror that once Marcus was locked away in that facility, no one would ever hear from him again. She photographed page after page, her phone battery dropping dangerously low, uploading everything immediately to 3 different cloud accounts she had created just for this purpose, knowing that if she was caught, at least the evidence would survive even if she didn't. A timeline document showed the whole conspiracy laid out like a business plan, starting with small doses of psychotropic drugs mixed into Marcus's daily coffee, escalating to stronger sedatives that would create confusion and memory loss, all leading to a boardroom coup where Blackwood would take control of the company, citing Marcus's mental incompetence. There were even emails between Blackwood and Dr. Pike discussing dosages, side effects, and how to make the decline appear natural, enough that no one would request an autopsy if Marcus happened to accidentally overdose once the papers were all signed. Amara's hands shook as she found receipts for the drugs, purchased through offshore pharmacies and shipped to a private address, and she recognized some of the names from the bottles she had seen in Marcus's bathroom. Powerful antipsychotics and benzodiazepines that should never be mixed but were being given to him in a cocktail designed to destroy his mind. She was so absorbed in documenting everything that she almost missed the soft ding of the elevator, and her blood froze as she heard footsteps approaching, moving quickly toward Blackwood's office, leaving her no time to escape through the main door. Without thinking, she dove behind a large leather couch in the corner, pulling her dark, cleaning uniform around her, and praying that whoever was coming wouldn't turn on the lights. Her phone clutched in her hand with all the evidence she needed, but useless if she was discovered here. The door opened, and she heard Blackwood's voice, along with someone else she didn't recognize at first until the person spoke. And she realized with shock that it was Jennifer, Marcus's assistant, not reluctantly involved but actively participating. As she said, "The old fool signed 3 more documents today. We're almost there, Richard. Just a few more days and everything will be yours. I mean ours." Through a gap under the couch, Amara could see their feet as they moved toward the desk, and she heard the sound of papers shuffling as Blackwood replied, "Dr. Pike says we need to increase the dose 1 more time to ensure he's completely incoherent for the board meeting on Friday. After that, the commitment papers are ready and the ambulance is on standby to take him directly to Vermont." Jennifer laughed, a cold sound that Amara had never heard from her before. 5 years of playing the perfect assistant, fetching his coffee, and pretending to care about his health. It'll all be worth it when we're running this empire, and he's drooling in a padded room thinking he's Napoleon or something. They continued discussing their plans, unaware that every word was being recorded on Amara's phone, which she had managed to switch to voice recording mode, capturing their confession as they detailed how they had manipulated Marcus, drugged him, isolated him from friends and family by intercepting his calls and emails, creating the perfect trap. Suddenly, the security guards' voices echoed in the hallway, saying something about checking all the offices because someone had reported seeing a light. And Amara's heart nearly stopped as Blackwood cursed and said they should leave before security found them there together at this suspicious hour. As their footsteps retreated, Amara waited, counting to 500 before she dared to move. Her legs cramped and shaking as she crawled out from behind the couch, knowing she had to get out, but also knowing the security guards were now actively searching the floor. She made it to the door and peered out, seeing the guards at the far end, checking offices systematically, and she knew her only chance was to reach the stairwell. But as she stepped into the hallway, a hand grabbed her shoulder, and she nearly screamed before recognizing Marcus Sterling himself, looking haggard and confused but more alert than she had seen him in weeks. "I know what you've been trying to do," he whispered urgently. "I found your notes. And tonight, I didn't drink the coffee. I pretended to be asleep when they were here. I heard everything they said. But they're watching me constantly. I can't call the police. They've tapped my phones, isolated me from everyone who could help." Amara grabbed his arm, showing him her phone with all the evidence she had collected, and his eyes widened with a mixture of rage and relief as he realized he wasn't going insane, that his suspicions were real. But before they could plan their next move, the security guard spotted them and started running toward them, shouting, "Mr. Sterling, stop. That woman is dangerous. She's been stealing from the company." One guard yelled, and Amara knew this was Blackwood's backup plan, to frame her as a thief and possibly deranged. But she also saw something in Marcus's eyes that gave her hope, a spark of the powerful man he used to be. As the guards surrounded them, Marcus stood straighter, despite the drugs still affecting his system, and said in his most commanding voice, "This woman has just shown me evidence of a conspiracy to destroy me, and you're going to escort us both to my car right now, or I'll have every one of you arrested for aiding in attempted murder." But the guards just laughed, and one of them said, "Mr. Blackwood warned us you might have a paranoid episode. Sir, we need to get you medical attention and have this thief arrested." In desperation, Amara did the only thing she could think of, dropping her phone and kicking it hard across the marble floor, where it slid under a heavy cabinet, shouting, "The evidence is uploaded. Even if you arrest me, the FBI will have it, all by morning." Which was a lie, but caused enough confusion for Marcus to break free and run toward his office, where she knew he had a private elevator. The guards chased after them. Amara followed, and as they burst into Marcus's office, she saw Blackwood and Jennifer already there, waiting with Dr. Pike and 2 men in white coats, carrying restraints, and Blackwood smiled coldly, saying, "Perfect timing, Marcus. These gentlemen from the Vermont facility are here to help you with your mental breakdown. And this cleaning woman who's been stalking and harassing you will be arrested for theft and assault." Marcus Sterling's mind fought through the fog of drugs as he stood in his office facing the trap that had been perfectly laid for him, with Blackwood smirking like a predator who had cornered his prey. But something in Amara's eyes gave him strength, as she subtly pointed to his desk phone, which he suddenly remembered had a direct emergency line to his personal lawyer that Blackwood didn't know about, installed years ago as a safety measure. Playing along with his supposed confusion, Marcus stumbled toward his desk, pretending to be disoriented while his fingers found the hidden button under the drawer, pressing it 3 times in the emergency pattern that would alert his lawyer, David Chen, and simultaneously record everything happening in the office to an external server. "You're all trying to confuse me," Marcus slurred deliberately, buying time as he knew David would immediately contact the FBI upon receiving the emergency signal. "I need to sit down. My head is spinning. Please just let me sit." And as he collapsed into his chair, he saw Amara understanding his plan as she began to loudly proclaim her innocence. "Mr. Sterling, they've been poisoning you for months. I have proof that Dr. Pike here has been prescribing dangerous drug combinations under false names. And Mr. Blackwood has been preparing to steal your company," she announced clearly, ensuring every word would be captured by the recording system. While Blackwood's face darkened with rage, Dr. Pike stepped forward with a syringe, saying Mr. Sterling needs immediate sedation for his own safety. But Marcus grabbed a heavy crystal paperweight from his desk, holding it up defensively while shouting, "Stay away from me. I'm not taking any more of your drugs. I know what you've been doing, and the authorities are already on their way." The bluff worked partially as Blackwood hesitated, not sure if Marcus had managed to contact someone, and in that moment of uncertainty, they heard sirens in the distance, though whether they were coming to Sterling Industries or somewhere else in the city, no one could tell. Jennifer tried to take control of the situation, pulling out documents and saying, "Mr. Sterling, you already signed the medical power of attorney. You're not well, and we're only trying to help you." But her hands shook as she spoke, realizing their carefully planned scenario was falling apart. Amara suddenly broke free from the guard holding her and ran to the window, screaming for help at the top of her lungs. "They're trying to kidnap Marcus Sterling. Someone called the police," knowing that even at this hour, there might be people on the street who would hear and react. The guards tried to grab her again, but Marcus stood up, summoning all his remaining strength and authority to declare, "Anyone who touches her or me will be charged with assault. I am still the CEO of this company, and I am ordering all security to stand down immediately," which created enough confusion among the guards, who weren't sure whose orders to follow. Blackwood made a critical error then, his arrogance getting the better of him as he laughed and said, "You stupid old man. I've been running this company for months, while you've been drooling into your coffee. Everyone thinks you're senile. No one will believe you over me. The board already knows about your condition, and they support the transition." This confession, clearly captured by the recording system, was exactly what Marcus needed, and he saw Amara pull out a second phone from her cleaning cart, one she had been using as a backup to record everything, and she held it up showing that she was live streaming to multiple social media platforms. "The whole world is watching now, Mr. Blackwood," Amara announced. And though she was bluffing about the live stream, the panic in Blackwood's eyes showed he believed her, and he ordered the men in white coats to grab Marcus immediately, deciding to complete the kidnapping regardless of witnesses. The office erupted into chaos as Marcus fought back with surprising strength, adrenaline overcoming the drugs in his system, while Amara grabbed cleaning supplies from her cart, spraying industrial-strength cleaner in the eyes of anyone who came near her, creating a chemical smokescreen that made everyone cough and stumble. In the confusion, the real FBI agents, alerted by David Chen 15 minutes earlier, burst through the office doors with weapons drawn, shouting for everyone to freeze, and the relief on Marcus's face was matched only by the terror on Blackwood's, as he realized his plan had completely unraveled. "Richard Blackwood, Jennifer Martinez, Dr. Harrison Pike, you're under arrest for conspiracy, attempted murder, fraud, and false imprisonment," the lead agent announced, and as they were handcuffed, Blackwood kept insisting this was all a misunderstanding, that Marcus was genuinely ill and they were trying to help him. Marcus was immediately taken to an independent hospital, where blood tests confirmed the presence of multiple psychotropic drugs in dangerous combinations, and doctors began the careful process of detoxification while Amara stayed by his side, finally able to be the advocate he needed. Over the next 48 hours, as Marcus's system cleared of the poisons, he provided detailed testimony to the FBI, with Amara's collected evidence proving invaluable in building the case. Every photo, recording, and document she had risked her job and safety together becoming pieces of the puzzle that revealed the full scope of the conspiracy. The investigation uncovered that Blackwood had been planning this for over 2 years, slowly positioning his allies throughout the company, bribing medical professionals, and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. But he hadn't counted on a cleaning lady who cared more about doing the right thing than keeping her job. Amara learned that she had been fired officially 3 days earlier on false theft charges. But Marcus immediately hired her as his personal security consultant, recognizing that her observation skills and courage were worth more than any traditional resume could show. The media sensation was immediate and overwhelming, with news outlets around the world covering the story of the janitor who saved a billionaire, though Amara refused most interview requests, saying she had only done what anyone should do when they see someone in danger. In his first public statement after recovering, Marcus stood with Amara at his side and said, "This woman saw my humanity when others saw only my wealth. She risked everything to save a stranger's life, and she reminded me that true character isn't measured by someone's job title, but by their actions when no one is watching." The trial preparations began immediately, with prosecutors confident they had enough evidence for conviction, thanks to Amara's documentation. And Marcus established $1 million reward fund for employees who report corporate crimes, naming it the Amara Thompson Integrity Fund, despite her protests that she didn't do it for recognition. As they sat in Marcus's office a week later, now swept clean of all surveillance devices, and with new security measures in place, he asked her how she had known something was wrong, when everyone else, including his closest advisors, had noticed nothing. Amara smiled sadly and replied, "When you've been invisible your whole life, Mr. Sterling, you learn to really see people, and I could see you were disappearing bit by bit, and nobody who builds something this beautiful should disappear without someone at least trying to help." The race against time had been won, but both of them knew the real victory was not just in exposing the conspiracy but in proving that every person, regardless of their position, has the power to stand up against injustice and make a difference when it matters most. The courtroom was packed to capacity 6 months later as Richard Blackwood, Jennifer Martinez, and Dr. Harrison Pike faced justice for their crimes, with Amara Thompson sitting in the witness box, her voice steady and clear as she recounted every detail of what she had observed during those terrifying months at Sterling Industries. Marcus Sterling, now fully recovered and sharper than ever, watched with deep respect as Amara presented the evidence she had risked everything to gather. Her testimony so compelling that several jury members were visibly moved when she described finding him collapsed and mumbling about being poisoned. The prosecutor held up the photographs Amara had taken, the recordings she had made, and the documents she had preserved, calling her the most courageous witness I've ever had the privilege to present, while Blackwood's expensive defense team struggled to find any holes in her meticulously documented timeline. When the verdict came down, guilty on all counts, with Blackwood receiving 25 years, Jennifer 15, and Dr. Pike losing his medical license plus 10 years in prison, Marcus felt justice had been served, but he knew the real work of rebuilding was just beginning. That evening, he invited Amara to dinner at a quiet restaurant away from the media frenzy, where he presented her with a proposal that would change both their lives forever, not just a reward or a job offer, but a partnership in a new initiative that would transform corporate culture across America. "I want to create the Thompson Institute for Corporate Accountability," Marcus explained, his eyes bright with purpose. "Named after you. Funded with $100 million initially, dedicated to training employees at all levels to recognize and report corporate crime, protecting whistleblowers, and ensuring that no one is ever invisible in the workplace again." Amara nearly dropped her water glass, overwhelmed by the scope of what he was suggesting. But Marcus continued, "You'll be the director, with full autonomy to build programs, hire staff, and create a network of observers in companies nationwide, who are trained to spot what others miss, just like you did." She thought of all the other janitors, security guards, mailroom clerks, and maintenance workers who saw everything but were never heard, and slowly nodded, accepting not for herself but for them, knowing this could change countless lives and prevent future tragedies. The announcement of the Thompson Institute made headlines worldwide, with Marcus and Amara appearing together on major news programs, where she spoke eloquently about the importance of valuing every employee's observations and creating safe channels for reporting concerns without fear of retaliation. Within weeks, hundreds of companies reached out wanting to participate in the program, and Amara found herself transformed from a night janitor to a nationally recognized advocate for workplace justice. Though she insisted on keeping her same, modest apartment and lifestyle, uncomfortable with sudden wealth, she hired her cousin Deshawn as the Institute's head of testing protocols, ensuring that suspected corporate poisonings or drug-related crimes could be quickly verified, and she brought in other formerly invisible workers who had witnessed wrongdoing but had been too afraid or powerless to speak up. Marcus, meanwhile, restructured Sterling Industries completely, implementing what he called the Amara Protocol, where every employee from the CEO to the newest hire had direct access to an independent ethics board, and where observation reports from any staff member were taken seriously and investigated thoroughly. The first graduating class of the Thompson Institute included 50 corporate guardians, as Amara called them, people trained in observation, documentation, basic legal knowledge, and self-protection, who would be placed in companies as regular employees, but with the additional role of ethical watchdogs. One of the most emotional moments came when Amara's daughter, Kesha, who had been struggling to pay for college while working 2 jobs, received a full scholarship to Harvard Law School from a fund Marcus had secretly established, though Amara only found out when Kesha called crying with joy. At the graduation ceremony for the corporate guardians, held in the same Sterling Industries building where everything had happened, Amara stood at the podium where she had once cleaned, addressing an audience that included senators, CEOs, and media from around the world. 8 months ago, I was invisible in these halls, pushing a cleaning cart and watching a good man slowly being destroyed. She began, her voice carrying the weight of everything she had experienced. Today, we ensure that no one is invisible anymore, that every voice matters, and that courage doesn't require a title or a degree, just the willingness to act when you see injustice. Marcus took the stage after her, announcing that Sterling Industries' profits had increased by 30% since implementing the new transparency measures, proving that ethical business practices and success were not mutually exclusive, and that he was establishing a $10 billion fund to support whistleblowers globally. The ripple effects were immediate and far-reaching, with 3 other major corporate conspiracies being exposed within the first year by employees who had been inspired by Amara's story and trained by her institute, saving not just companies, but lives that might have been destroyed by greed and corruption. Amara's mother, who had worked as a housekeeper for 40 years and always told her daughter to keep your head down and do your work, came to visit the institute's headquarters, tears streaming down her face as she saw her daughter's name on the building and understood that keeping your head down sometimes meant seeing things others missed. The partnership between Marcus and Amara evolved into a deep friendship built on mutual respect, with him often seeking her counsel on major decisions, valuing her insight that came from years of observing human nature from the shadows, and she helped him rebuild trust with his family and friends who had been pushed away during his poisoning. A year after the trial, at the Institute's first anniversary gala, Amara received an unexpected honor when the President of the United States awarded her the Presidential Medal of Freedom for her courage in exposing corporate corruption and creating systemic change that protected vulnerable workers nationwide. In her acceptance speech, wearing the same simple black dress she had bought for the trial, Amara said, "This medal belongs to every person who goes to work each day in jobs that society calls minor, but which are actually major, who see everything, but are seen by no one, who clean up messes both literal and metaphorical, and who deserve to be heard when they speak truth to power." The Thompson Institute expanded internationally within 2 years, with branches in London, Tokyo, and Johannesburg, all staffed by formerly invisible workers who had been trained to be the eyes and ears of corporate conscience, creating a global network of ethical observers. Marcus, healthier and happier than he had been in years, often reflected on how close he had come to losing everything. Not just his company, but his mind, and possibly his life, saved by someone whom the world had trained him not to see, teaching him that true security comes not from guards and gates, but from treating every human being with dignity and respect. 5 years later, as Amara stood in her office at the Thompson Institute, looking out at the city where she had once been, just another invisible worker, she received a call from a janitor in Seattle who had noticed troubling patterns in his CEO's behavior, and she smiled, knowing that her legacy was not just in saving one life, but in creating a system where every life was valued. The story of the cleaning lady who saved a billionaire became required reading in business schools nationwide, not as a fairy tale, but as a case study in corporate responsibility, ethical observation, and the power of individual courage to change systems that seemed unchangeable. Marcus Sterling's final public statement before retiring summed up what they had both learned. "Amara Thompson taught me that wealth isn't measured in billions, but in the number of people willing to risk everything to save you, and that the most valuable employees aren't always in corner offices, but sometimes in the corners we never bother to look at. And if we want our businesses and our society to thrive, we need to see everyone, hear everyone, and value everyone, because heroes don't always wear suits. Sometimes they wear work uniforms and carry cleaning supplies. And they see what needs to be cleaned up in more ways than one.